What is up guys, and this is a smartphone that I didn't think I'd be covering again 7 years down the line, but this is the Samsung Galaxy Note N7000. This is one of the most definitive and iconic handsets ever released, and one of the keys to Samsung's success in the smartphone market. They were the first mainstream player to dive headfirst into the market for super large screen handsets. And if we compare it to this over here, the box is interesting in itself. We have come to expect so much more from a smartphone. Side by side with their latest S9 Plus package, you can see how the smartphone has transitioned from a productivity tool to a fashion statement. The amount of refinement here in just 7 years is pretty incredible. Let's get it open. Okay, so the packaging, and there's a few things to note on the back. The Super AMOLED display, the first debut of the S Pen, and the 2500 mAh battery, which is very small by today's standards. Getting inside the box, we've got an instruction manual on top, and of course the device below that. And we've got a few more things right at the bottom. The 2500 mAh battery, considered large at the time, a micro USB cable for data transfer, and a charger. This isn't the original charger that came with the first edition of the phone, but I believe this box has been repackaged. We've also got some pretty decent looking earphones in the box. But what is the deal with this phone? Let's find out. The Samsung Galaxy Note is incredibly wide, with a 16:10 aspect ratio and nearly as much bezel on the side than the S9 Plus has on the bottom. My fingers are only just reaching the other end, and my hands are above average. In other words, there is no comfortable way to hold this phone. You'll also notice the very square aesthetic, from the rear camera to the home button to the device itself. And this is something that has very quickly gone from a desirable trait to something that must be avoided at all costs. It's also really thick at just under 10mm, but is still lighter than its modern counterparts, due to the plastic construction and smaller battery. Now, there are a few things about this phone that I do like, the first being the menu key. This has disappeared in Android phones over the last few years, and quite rightly, it's not necessary for anything in particular, and given a choice, I would take the larger screen over this any day. But it is essentially a contextual button that can bring up options that depend on what you are doing. So when used correctly, like in the browser, can save you reaching all the way up to the top of the phone, which on some of today's flagships is no small feat. The second thing is that you've got this grainy texture on the back. And while the material itself leaves a lot to be desired, you really appreciate the extra grip that the finish grants you. Even though the phone isn't particularly ergonomic, there is slim chance it's going to fall out of your hands because of this material. It can also withstand a lot more manhandling. The finish is more resistant to scratches and being shattered than the glass we've got on 90% of 2018 phones. You can throw this pretty much as hard as you want and you probably won't break it. And worst comes to worst and you do damage the back, you can just swap it out. You've also got most of the standard physical aspects of a 2011 phone. A clicky home button, micro USB for charging, a headphone jack, and no notch. So, in some aspects, jumping back to 2011 is a breath of fresh air, but in other areas offers a woeful experience. The camera, for instance, has a dreadful time coping with high dynamic range scenarios compared to modern offerings, and low light performance is a mile away. And if you think the 8-megapixel rear camera is bad, I recommend you stay away from the 2-megapixel front camera. It's also very slow. In the early days of Android, Samsung's TouchWiz software got a lot of flack, and one of the main complaints was that this skin was way too heavy and caused phones to slow down. While the Galaxy Note isn't loaded with bloatware, the software skin does feel weighed down. It's based on Android 4.1 Jelly Bean and has got a completely customized look and feel, an app shortcuts bar, and a Samsung version of pretty much every application. And even though this is one of the first phones to pack a dual-core CPU, there is a delay with almost every single action or button press. Just for fun, I tried running an Antutu benchmark on this phone side by side with the S9 Plus, and the results weren't pretty. The display is an odd one too. Considered at the time one of the phone's key selling points, the color accuracy is way off. It's got a not too subtle green tinge, and the brightness leaves a lot to be desired. It's interesting how, when it was announced, the display was considered vast, excessive, way too large for most users, but how now it is below average in size. We're looking at a 5.3-inch screen with a 1280 by 800 resolution, which means in most cases it's sharp enough, but you'll notice pixelation when it renders circles and rounded objects. It is vibrant though, due to the Super AMOLED tech, and in that sense is pretty impressive given its time, and is a reminder that Samsung has been leading the phone display game for a while now. Alright guys, if you did enjoy the video, then I'm going to leave you some links to some other ones I think you might like. And if you're new to the channel, it would mean a lot to me if you could smash that subscribe button. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you guys next time.